All right. First of all, thank you so much again. And like Muhundan said, I lead the digital transformation practice for Stantec, and happy to be here to be part of SWAM, as well as the Rising Smart Water Professionals Group. So the topic of interest today is the artificial intelligence in water industry, right? So, but I want to say, big disclaimer, I'm not here to talk about AI. You're not going to learn any AI from me. There are lots of intelligent people and smart people out there who can teach more about AI and the techniques and technologies. But what I want to talk about today is how can AI add value to the water industry, and how is it relevant to the water industry? That I want to introduce you by taking through some of the concepts on water value chain. What are the objectives of the water industry, water utilities on a daily basis, on a yearly basis, on for many different things, and then what the trends are right now, and how does it again come back down to AI, and what are the implications of AI and applications of AI. So with that said, so first thing I want to talk about the water value chain. I'm not sure if you have seen this, but this is nothing new, right? What we call within Stantec is the value chain. It starts with the water supply or the water resources, which is the beginning of the environment, going through your water treatment process, distribution to the customers, and then the collection happens, the sewer collection, and then goes to the reclamation treatment phase of it, and then eventually gets discharged back into the environment. So it's a full cycle, right? And then when you talk to the water utilities in general, you would see the themes that you see on the right side being a common one, right? When it comes to operational efficiency, how can we better run the plants? How can we be resource conscious and increase the efficiency of the resources that they use in terms of energy, chemicals, and whatnot? And financial efficiency. Infrastructure reliability is a big component of water utilities when it comes to managing the water utilities, especially when it is related to the buried infrastructure, when there are so many unknowns that we don't even know how to manage those things. Customer satisfaction is a big focus these days. The folks in UK can very much relate to those because of the mandates as well as the incentivized mechanisms in UK for customer satisfaction, and even some of the fundings that they get through the SIM programs. Environmental stewardship, and last but not the least, which is the workforce empowerment. How can they keep, like June was talking earlier, it's all about the people. How can we empower the people with the resources and the tools and solutions to make them do their jobs better? And that's what it's all about, right? And then also, when we think about AI and digital or technology, it is not anything new to the water industry. We've been seeing this for many number of decades, starting all the way back in the late 50s and 60s when we started using mainframe computers, all the way in the 80s when we started using programming solutions, and early 2000s the network boom that happened, and now we are in the whole IoT side of the spectrum, right? And we have so many different technology solutions. Not that we have so many, but also they are becoming cost effective from an implementation perspective and availability perspective in terms of where can we host? Does it have to be an on-prem platform, or does it could it be a cloud installation? Can it be very elastic? Can that solutions be more dynamic and flexible? All those things are available these days for a fairly reasonable price for many utilities. So that's what makes it more interesting and attractive for water utilities to think about a business case for application of not just the AI solutions, but also so many different technology opportunities out there in the market space. And very briefly, I want to talk about, we talk a lot about AI, machine learning, the whole spectrum of data science, right? But then, what does it mean to a water industry? What is going on in the water industry? If you think about it from simple perspective, it's all about decision making, right? We're all making decisions. Everyone's responsible for making some type of decision, depending on what their tasks are, what their objectives are, what outcomes that they are trying to achieve within the organization. It's all about a whole bunch of decisions. And these decisions come together to help the utilities achieve their objectives. The decisions could be at the millisecond level when you're at the operations of the wastewater treatment plants, water treatment plants, or pump stations. It could be hourly, daily, based on the maintenance activities, or it could be weekly or quarterly from a financial perspective. So all of this is about making better decisions. And that's where AI comes into play, right? AI, simple terms, is nothing but helping us making decisions, make better decisions. Sometimes, make decisions that we haven't been able to make in the past. Water industry in general is filled with so much data. So it becomes a natural progression when we think about application of AI for water industry to solve some of the issues that we are currently focused on, right? From a business outcome perspective. So that's how the AI comes into play. Again, when we think about the water cycle, there are numerous opportunities and places where we can employ AI solutions. But AI solution is not going to be the only silver bullet, right? AI is one piece of the overall puzzle from a technology perspective. You have to think about sensing capabilities, which helps you with the data collection. And then you have connectivity, which is really an important part of the whole technology spectrum, because that helps you send and receive data and share data either locally or with the cloud and all those things. And then the final piece of the puzzle is your analytics, which is where the AI sits in. So all of it have to work together to achieve the business outcomes that the water utilities plan on achieving. So on the right, what you see is a whole bunch of use case applications. What I mean by that is, you want to focus on asset performance management. We have an application for AI from being more time-based maintenance to becoming more predictive and prescriptive maintenance. The way you do that is by collecting additional information on your equipments and machinery within the wastewater treatment plants and use that data to look at the patterns in terms of the behaviors of their machinery and come up with a model to predict when a certain equipment can go out of service, things like that. If you can avoid unplanned downtime for any facility, it's going to really help the operators from an efficiency perspective. They can know when to switch one equipment over the other. All these things are supported by the AI applications, and the full mature AI situation, so the application is having a digital twin in place. I'm sure you guys have heard about the whole digital twin, right? It's, again, a combination of a whole bunch of models built together and stitched together based on specific business use cases. So bottom line, what I'm trying to tell you guys here is, I think there is the technology already out there. The techniques are already out there. But it's the matter of getting it executed in a methodical way will help the water utilities achieve their business outcomes. So we talked about all these opportunities out there in the market space and what can be done and what needs to be done. So the question always is, okay, so what are the challenges? Based on my experience, and people who have many numbers of experience and other experts in the field, the challenge is always not about technology. Technology is the easiest thing that you can solve because it's tangible, you can see it, you can play around with it, but the biggest challenge is in terms of having the right business processes in place, making sure your organization understand this change that's happening and how does it help them in terms of the daily operations and daily functions, and having a leadership that's going to be your evangelist supporting this technological revolution happening within the water industry. And that's going to be the biggest challenge. I mean, you might have heard it, but what we see time and again is having that strong change management, having that multiple levels of having change agents situated at the multiple levels of the organization, trying to steer the ship move forward is the biggest challenge. And there are ways to get that done, but it's not going to be an overnight activity. It takes years. It takes a programmatic approach to get these things implemented. So, in summary, what I want to say is AI is definitely a future for us. It's been hitting every industry. It's not just the water industry. Other industries are taking full advantage of it because of some of the competitive nature of other industries. But for water industry to have to be able to embrace AI, it all depends on us, meaning the people who are in the water industry, is what will make it or break it or make full advantage of the AI. But eventually it will come to water industry to its fullest form. So in summary, what I want to say is, digital is not new to the water industry, right? It's about taking advantage of the technologies and make sense for what the business outcomes are for the water industry specific utility. And these business outcomes are different for different utilities. So one size does not fit at all. And then when we think about AI and any solution, any technology, we need to think about what type of value that it's going to add to the workforce, the customer base at the end of the day, right? It needs to be a tangible, measurable outcome. Otherwise, it'll be hard for people to justify the use of these technology solutions in the long run. And then, as I mentioned, it's not just one piece of the puzzle. Workforce aspects and business processes and how they are all managed internally, how they're all put together is another big component of big factor that's influencing the success of any technology implementation, including AI. Last but not the least, again, is the strong leadership and having those change agents who are strong evangelists who can spearhead these initiatives at different levels of the organization, who can steer this ship forward. So, when you guys think about AI, think about it's a bunch of decision making. How can you make those decision making come together? How can people be convinced? How can you sell that idea? How can you help others recognize the value in it? Without being able to communicate those things, these AI projects will not be successful. That's my short talk on this AI related to water industry. Mukundan,
awesome, awesome, Prabhu. Thank you. Thanks for the talk. It was very informative. And now the stage is open to questions. We thought of having a short Q&A session with Prabhu. If you guys have any questions on the presentation or in general about AI and water, you can ask him right now by unmuting yourself, or you could also post the questions on the chat box.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really well organized, and I think that the ideas came out really clear. I have more of a comment and not so much a question, I guess, because the water sector is a very traditional and very slow-moving sector, and rightfully so, because we are dealing with something that is critical for people's health and for the society to function. So if something goes wrong by trying something new, then it's a big issue. So it's understandable that it's so slow to move and to apply new things, and typically goes after other sectors like energy sector or similar sectors that start applying new things earlier on. I believe that it's also a matter, like you said, that's to involve the workforce, because typically the operational people, if they are not involved, they will not trust this new technology.
Absolutely.
And if they don't trust this new technology, they will not use the new technology, so it will not be implemented. Even if you spend millions implementing the technology, if the workforce does not understand it, then they will not implement it. And another comment, and this is more, well, I'm from Portugal, so it's very local, a local comment. We have a lot of public utilities which cannot afford to implement this type of technologies. So they do not have a positive balance to be able to apply. And when they do want to apply, they need to go through public tendering and all this bureaucracy that it's really complicated.
Yeah.
And so this makes them be very at the back end. So they don't even have sensors in the network. They're not even measuring, some of them, especially the smaller ones with less money. They don't even have sensors in the network. They don't have enough data with enough quality that is crucial for AI to work. Because without data, then you're not going anywhere with no type of modeling or AI. So a question could be how can we, in these smaller companies that do not have the resources to implement this, what could be the process for them to start building up this digitalization of their company and becoming smarter?
So, Joanna, thank you, first of all, for all your comments. They apply to all the utilities, many utilities, even in the US. Some bureaucratic processes happen quite often in many places. I don't want to use the word bureaucratic, but there are some processes that they have to go through, right? And workforce is, again, a biggest challenge even for utilities in the US. There's always resistance, not from operators, not just from the operators, but also from the engineering staff and many layers of staff within the utility. So I can totally understand what you're saying. But going back to your question, how do you approach it, right? So as I mentioned before, the cost of technology has become significantly cheaper compared to what it was even 5 years back. So that makes it very attractive. Now, how do you begin? Where to begin? You want to look at what the points are. It has to be a programmatic approach, having a discussion with the leadership. Without the leadership, without having their willingness to actually explore some opportunities, it won't go further. So we need to make sure that we have the right leadership who's willing to listen, who is willing to even invest in small pilot. That would be first part of it. Many times, simple things like tweaking some of your, let me give you an example. For one of our clients, we didn't spend a lot of money. We spent really cheaper $300 sensors in the sewer system to collect information, simple flow and the depth readings, which we used to do a simple statistical calculation, basically looking at what the average of up and, of the flow and the depth to help come up with a predictive algorithm for maintenance issues. Just a simple alarm one. I'm just giving you a simple example. It didn't cost a lot of money. The return on investment of these ones were less than a year, right? I mean, they could have spent hundreds and thousands of dollars in cleanup if any overflow occurred. Even, reducing that number of overflows in the system by about 10%, 20% would be a significant savings compared to this investment. So that kind of a business case analysis has to be put in place. We need to have the right leadership in place, have them, walk this process through, make them educated on these business cases, right? They need to see the value in it. Okay, if I'm spending, let's say $100,000 worth of project, I'm saving $1 million there, right? So that's kind of a conversation has to happen. Plus also that conversation has to happen with the operators also. Help them understand, think about it. You don't have to work overtime. You don't have to run around all the time trying to put out fires. If you can better understand your system, if you have better data, if you can better predict where you need to be when you can be. So that messaging needs to happen. I mean, it's not, if there is a lot of resistance, it's going to take a lot of time. That is a fact. We have similar situations even in the US, where there is a heavy reservation and from the field operators not wanting to use anything technology related. It's similar to what you are experiencing. But going back to your answer, daily operations plus also other finances, that's the only way to do. And we have done it with some of our clients here in the US.
That also assist in moving this
Absolutely.
forward.
You're asking the right questions and bringing up a very good point about the policy and governance. Obviously, they need to have, so going to policies and probably it has to start all there from the strategic priority with specific focus on, let's say, performance measures. If they set their performance, let's say, I need to reduce my unplanned downtime by this much. If they don't have those kind of business outcomes established, there won't be any driver further down, right? Policies and governance, and also strategies and tactics tied to that specific outcome. Depending on how the policies are written, you probably have to go revisit those things also.
I agree. Thank you.
So go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to ask if anybody else had questions on the topic. It could also, it could be about the topic, or it could be about, what do you expect from future RISP activities, or how do you like to get more involved in these activities? If you guys have questions on any of these topics, you can post them here and we'll try to answer them now, or we'll get you an answer later after the event. I had a question, Prabhu.
Sure.
Yeah, if you have time. We have around, I guess we have some 3-4 minutes. So you were originally a wastewater engineer to start with in your career. So how was the transition? Because I specialized in wastewater treatment in my master's, and now I'm trying to get into digital water. So how was the transition for you? Career-wise, knowledge-wise, skills-wise.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Well, even, I grew up in India, right? I mean, I had a part-time IT degree that I did back home. But even after I came here and was in the wastewater business, I always had an eye for problem solving using Excel-based solutions or things like that. So my interest had always been there. Anytime there was an opportunity to solve problems using data-driven solutions, I took advantage of those opportunities to work on those problems. And like June mentioned, don't be afraid to stick your neck out. Sometimes it's probably very uncomfortable to put yourself out there. Just try it out, if it, and you'd be surprised that, what you can do after you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. I think it's almost going to be over, right?
Yeah.
I say.
Feel free to come off mute and say your question. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, please feel free to put your question in the chat, but we want it to be an engaging and open conversation. And then one last note is that the session is being recorded. So if you don't feel comfortable being on screen, you can feel free to turn your video off. And then we will report back to the main session. When we go back to the main session, we will be reporting on some of the topics that we covered. So I would love if someone would be interested in volunteering themselves to rapporteur the session. It's a great opportunity to get your voice heard, get your name out there, and it's a very informal setting. So just anyone raise your hand or come off mute and volunteer yourself if you'd like to be the one to report back to the larger group. Come on, I don't want to do it.
Sure, I can volunteer.
Okay, thank you, Canberry. Great. Okay, so I will allow us now to, I'll switch over to the professionals to give their presentations. So Ricardo, you can take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen then so you can see the presentation that Andrea and I prepared for today. Tell me if you can see it. So Jessica, shall we start also with the icebreakers we mentioned, or maybe there is not enough time? I mean, can I go?
Yeah, I think maybe we can do the first one rather than both of them.
Okay, so the first one, okay, fine. So everybody, I am Ricardo Tormina. I'm very happy to be here with all of you. I am assistant professor at TU Delft in the Netherlands. I am an assistant professor in urban water infrastructure, and I have a lab in artificial intelligence for sustainable water management. So these are sort of like the things that I'm interested in. And I have the pleasure to have with me Andrea, who's going to introduce himself and is going to do with me the presentation. So Andrea and I used to collaborate on several projects. Our expertise somehow overlaps, but also kind of complements each other. So Andrea, you can take over.
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. Thanks, Jessica, for introducing the session. Yeah, my name is Andrea Cominola. I'm assistant professor at the Technische Universität Berlin and the Einstein Center Digital Future. I'm actually talking today from Italy, as I'm Italian, as Ricardo is as well. And finally, we could go back to our home country after many months of lockdown and so on. So yeah, let's get into this presentation, which is about the opportunities for digitalization in the water sector against, let's say, climate challenges, right? And so, yeah, maybe since we have short time, I would actually go to the second Menti, I would say, as an icebreaker, because we have already something about the demographics. So I invite you now, maybe just 1 minute, very quick one, to go to menti.com again and use this code 376954. And we ask you a couple of simple questions. There's no right or wrong answer. One is just about where you come from in terms of background, so whether you're in the industry or academia or so, and one is more about how much you know about some keywords that we will actually touch during our presentation. And I see, thanks Ricardo for...
I'm also sharing the link in the chat so you can click directly on it. It's gonna be like maybe easier to get, sorry.
And then I think it's gonna be, yeah, we can check this exactly. 211, somebody's missing. Okay, so we're 8 here, minus the 2 of us. Okay, what's your industry? So we have a good, well, yeah, somebody from the water. It's nice that many sectors are represented here. So we have a quite, let's say, small but diverse audience, which is very good. Which is very, very good. Can we also jump to the second question maybe already? And then I jump into the presentation. Okay, how familiar are you with these terms? Nobody completed this one yet, but we're curious. We'll talk about most of these things. Okay, I wait a few seconds more and then I guess you're also free to answer this question later while we're talking. But yes, somebody's replying here. Oh, wow. So there's somebody who knows about infrastructure resilience and deep learning. That's very good.
Not me.
Day 0. No Stuxnet yet. That's on Ricardo's. Okay, but good. That let's say I see. Let's say there are these two keywords, deep learning and infrastructure resilience, that really pop out of these, and I think these are gonna be, let's say, the main two lines of our presentation. Actually, then there are some other ones that we will explain a little bit more in the details. So I think we can jump back to the presentation now, and I'll try to cover the first part here. So Ricardo and I basically are working every day with so-called digital water, digitalization of the water sector, and so on. So let me just, it's quite a very vague concept at some point because there's no unique definition of it. The one that I like and I like to use here is the one given by Census, where they want to define a smart water network is, we don't need to read through this. I'm just going to mention these bold keywords. So it's a mix of products, solutions, and systems. So it's not just one thing, but it's many things at different scales, right? Products and solution, and then the big systems. And these are useful for monitoring, diagnose problems, prioritize, manage, and optimize. So basically, it can be something just, we observe a system, like monitoring it, and then we move towards more proactive and actionable and say tasks that go into prioritize, manage, and optimize. So this is really something that is encompassed by the digital water term that we use. And Ricardo, if you can go next one, please. Digitalization is an ongoing process. It's not something that it's done. It's not something that just started. Let's say I would say we're at a good step of it, but it's still a very ongoing process, and it has already demonstrated the set of benefits. You can see the titles here: to community, to the operational side, so the practical and technical aspects of it, financial benefits, and then long-term resiliency benefit. Now, these are taken from this IWA report 2019. I'm not going to enter into many of these, but I just want to mention a couple of them which are relevant for this session, right? So you see maybe on the bottom left, environmental protection, so reduce risk of sewage overflow into the environment. And this has to deal with some climate extreme events, which is increasing the risk for this water network. So maybe if you move now to the opposite side, top right, so increased resilience and improved operational flexibility from climate change and demographics. So these are more or less the two aspects that we're tackling throughout this presentation. And this with a strong background on technology, data science, and artificial intelligence. So Ricardo, if you can go next. I want to give you just a couple of examples of what we work on every day, basically, and which tools we developed. So maybe you've heard about digital twins. That was one of the keywords, I guess, in the Menti, if I'm not wrong. And so basically having a digital twin, so virtual representation of a cyber-physical system, which can be either purely virtual for simulation or maybe a lab with a joint virtual interface, as you see here on the right from our lab in Berlin. It's really something that is a key tool for enabling scenario analysis and see what happens to our water systems under different climate and demographic scenarios, for instance, that we've mentioned before. And then to avoid that problems are just solved when you can see them in the real life, as you see on the picture on the left of this guy, this operator needs to clean a pump from a clogging problem. And now, the next, please. This whole digitalization process, as we're introducing this session, has to deal with changing climate scenarios, right? And this can go in two directions. One good example I'd like to mention is here, Berlin, city where I live. 3 years ago, actually, flash floods. So strong events in the summer, streets are flooded, and then the system overflowing and so on. So how does technology help in this case? We can go next. One example is maybe this work that has been done at IAWAG in the Switzerland, where they used some data from surveillance cameras to estimate the level of flood in the streets with convolution neural networks. So now, you see here there's surveillance cameras, so non-conventional data sources. And then there's an actual problem given by the climate conditions, so floods in the street, for instance, and then AI with the deep convolutional neural networks in place. So these sensor algorithms and then actual tangible real application is what is driving our research. And maybe let me just give you one more example in the next slide, where opposite situation, drought, South Africa, day zero, so the day in which many people in Cape Town probably would be affected by shortage on the water demand. So water supply was incredibly low a couple of years ago. And then a huge demand intervention managed to push this day zero to 2019, or the same context in California, next slide, where they had to put, as was mentioned in the keynote, in place some restrictions on water usage for this prolonged drought, both in 2015 and 2018. So how is digitalization helping us in this situation? One example, there are many, I'm giving just one here for the sake of the short time available, is to act on the water demand. Digital technologies are helping to this with better metering, better reporting, and better understanding the behavior of people and how we can increase the efficiency of the network on the one side, but also the efficiency of water demand on the other side. And here's a couple of small, well, not small anymore, companies that are doing behavioral interventions for improving the efficiency of water demand. And so this is not just research, this is actually a joint cooperation between research and then companies and utilities, of course, and water authorities. And let me go to the final slide I'm presenting here, where basically my message is also that, yes, I was giving some examples. Yes, I was also saying that this is an ongoing process. So we're let's say digitalization has many benefits. We've seen many, and we've seen also this nice overview at the beginning, but it entails, since it's an ongoing process, also a lot of challenges. We're trying to discover them via this survey among different universities and supported by several organizations, among which Swan. I thanks Swan again for this. Thanks, Amir. And yeah, and so let's now jump into the challenges of this digitalization that Ricardo can explain.
Thanks a lot, Andrea, for the great introduction. So yeah, now I'm going to talk about the challenges related to digitalization in the water sector. So the first challenge that I want to mention is about data availability and big data availability in particular. So when we talk about smart technologies, we always refer to AI, digital twins, data science, but we need like a very large data set to actually, have the insights that we need to solve real problems. So we have to be very critical about the data that we're dealing with, the data that we have. We have to assess the data and its bigness in many directions. So we have to consider the completeness. We have to see whether all the variables and processes that we need to address. We have to talk about resolution. So does the data that we have actually is enough resolution for our purposes? We need to also consider the extension. So is our data set representative of the spatial temporal variability that we're interested in modeling? And also we need to consider the consistency. We need to be aware that, like in space and time, different sensors, very different sensors can actually sense the same variable that we use to model our problem. So you see, for instance, an example on the right, which is related to soil moisture, which is one of the essential climate variables, to understand actually our climate Earth-wise. So we see that although we have 40 years of data products available, this data is taken from very different sensors in working with very different resolutions. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done to ensure the consistency and this resolution and the gaps in any sort of big data product that we can think of. If we move from remote sensing and from space back down to Earth, and we consider, for instance, like a smart water distribution system, we have to be aware that we need to put in place an IoT, an Internet of Things infrastructure, in order to actually get all the data that we need for our like smart technologies, right, to work. So this is an example for smart energy, but actually something very similar can be also thought about water. So all the things that like Andrea mentioned, our big data algorithms, our digital twins, AI, they actually sit on a huge stack of different components that need to be interconnected, that actually allows data coming from the field to reach all the way up to the services that we can then use to to do our decision making, analyze the problems, and so on and so forth. The example that you see here is about Fiverr, which is an open source platform for smart solutions, and there are many applications of Fiverr also in the water sector, and I will be sharing with you after the end of the presentation maybe a link to this that I really encourage you to have a look at to see what's actually going on. But it's very important to understand that we need to have system thinking to approach these problems, whether you are on the client side, so working for a public utility, water authority, or whether you're a consultant or someone working in the integration. Like we need to apply system thinking, functional processing to make sure that these things can actually be deployed and work. And actually now we've got to move to a system of system thinking, especially at the higher level. So something that you have to consider like maybe later on in your career, but you've got to start now. Understanding that the world is completely interconnected. So if we deploy a smart solution for water, we will need more and more to rely on power and communication. So if something goes wrong in power or communication, we will have cascading effects through the interconnection, which will in the end produce a failure also in our water system, in a smart solution. So we need really to be aware for this, think about redundancy, think about like mitigation plan and so on and so forth. And I want to end this part of the challenges with a huge challenges that I'm quite interested in because I do some research in this field, and cybersecurity and also privacy. So everybody needs to be very aware that whenever we are interfacing, like an infrastructure, which is physical mainly, with digitalization, we are automatically, providing a huge attack surface for hackers to exploit and not only steal data and information, either from the company or the customers, but also, they can actually hijack and sabotage and destroy and disrupt the physical processes that bring water to our houses and so on and so forth. Here you see actually a list of 15, I think 15, attacks that we know happen. Many more actually happen, but water utilities and water authorities are not really keen on disclosing this information. The latest one was only a few months ago, and it was in Israel, and it was in full COVID-19 crisis. Basically, like hackers tried to hijack several water systems in Israel. Luckily, things went well, but it's not always the case. So we really need to be also aware. I also want to point out that, I mentioned Stuxnet. We mentioned Stuxnet at the beginning of this presentation. Nobody recognized it, makes sense, but Stuxnet is actually the most important cyber attacks happening to a real physical infrastructure. And it kind of like showed the whole world that now, when we do digitalization, we need to really be aware about these problems. And you can see that in the water, actually, we start having attacks even before Stuxnet, to year 2000. So it is one of the most attacked sensors. So to finish up, Andrea and I kind of like, discussed on the hard skills and soft skills that we think are most important to kind of deal with the challenges of deploying and using with purpose, like solutions, smart solution for climate and water. And if you can tell maybe from the presentation, these are all things that we've been saying either for one slide or another, but we really need to like improve our hard skills, also the soft skills. So on one side, we need to start about system thinking, move towards system of system thinking, be maybe IT literate, be always aware that we're dealing with very uncertain future with a lot of risk involved. And on the other hand, we'd also have to build our interdisciplinary skills across the board. And also, for instance, something which is very important is being aware that we need to be able to interact and communicate with very different stakeholders, different audiences that require a very different level of like detail, and so on and so forth. Also, continuous learning is something that you really need to have in order to like be successful in this future, smart future, let's say, of water and climate. And now I'm going to hand the presentation again to Andrea, which is going to finish up with these takeaways.
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. Yeah, let me just wrap up our presentation here. So Ricardo listed a series of skills we actually see as very important to work in this field. So how to get there, actually. So this is what we think. Of course, it's not the answer, but it's what we see based on our experience. So first of all, to build a multidisciplinary specialized profile. So having a multidisciplinary profile is a specialization itself. So how to do this? You need to look for education opportunities and hackathons also, where you can meet other professionals, other young professionals, summer schools on data science, but also data science and hybrid topics, workshop, open courses, and then maybe just be informed with newsletters, things like this. Very easy, but you have to look for them, right? Then, as we mentioned already, experience, international experience and internships, maybe, so that you have a view of what happens in the industry as well, not only in the academia, etc. And then it's all about, as was also mentioned, the keyword in the keynote, it's also about a lot of about people, about community. So you have to identify your community of interest so that you get to know what other people in the field are doing with different backgrounds and so on. Swan might be one of these. Some of them might be more related to water, some of them might be more related to natural resources, things like this. And then once you're in a community, be active in it. So engage with the activities of the community. For instance, we've seen that Swan is offering two very interesting webinars and workshops soon on digital twin and cybersecurity that we also mentioned here. So these are all opportunities to learn more and meet new people, new professionals, and so on. And then last but not least, is very important, find good mentors. So you have to find people to learn from. Ricardo and myself are still very young, so we also have our own mentors. It's not something that ends when you basically do the next step of your career. It's something really important to keep in mind. And yeah, I think with this we can close, and I'm happy to enter the discussion session.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Yep, and I think Jessica, you can.
Great, thank you so much. That was fascinating, and I really love how you've touched on a lot of the different fields that or segments that we wanted to talk about in this session, from some of the more technical work that you're involved in to the skills that are really valuable for young professionals kind of in this field, and then the practical part of it, which is how do you get those skills. So thank you so much for that presentation. We have about 6 minutes before we're going to be sent back to the main event. So actually just want to open it up. We're quite a small group, so I think if anyone has immediate questions, I don't want to be monopolizing the session. So please feel free to come off mute if you have a question, or if you'd like to put it in the chat, that's also fine. Otherwise, I can start it off with one question to our experts, which is, maybe you can chat a little bit more about your personal career path. Any decisions that you might have made differently, and maybe since we're all coming from different sectors, maybe you could speak about your decision to stay in academia versus moving into industry, some of the choices that you've made along the way.
Yeah, I go first, Ricardo. You want to take it? Okay, I go first. So yeah, let's say that in my case, the background and the path was very, let's say, diverse in a way, because I started as a environmental engineer during my bachelor and master, and then I moved more into IT for environmental resources management during my PhD. And that's where I primarily focused then on water. And then, then let's say let's say I've been always looking for multidisciplinary opportunities during this path, as also we had double degree that looked also a lot into innovation and so on. So the innovation and technological aspects always interested me. Probably something I would change is maybe to get some, let's say, more in-depth knowledge on IT aspects first, earlier in my career. That's definitely something I would look for. Very quick also on the decision to stay in the academia, that was, let's say, I don't feel it's yet a final decision, let's say. The thing is that I love research. I always look for very interesting projects. And at some point, Ricardo and I also thought about maybe, we start a startup and so on. This is not something that we abandoned, but then our main career now is in the university. I think we were following some interesting projects and opportunities, and that's how we ended up being. Ricardo.
Yeah, if I can add to that, so my story maybe is slightly different, but not that much. So actually, I graduated. My high school was very focused in IT. I was really into programming. I was making video games when I was 15, and then actually, unfortunately, my teachers were not that good. I'm from the south of Italy, so this happens. Andrea is more lucky. So at some point, I say, I'm not gonna bother with this anymore. So I thought, I'm gonna save the world, and I started working in environment. I did my my bachelor as an environmental engineer, and then maybe halfway I was like, maybe I should have stick to IT, maybe that's what I like, but I was really too stubborn and didn't want to go back and start from the beginning. So I told myself, what, you're gonna bridge IT and environmental engineering and water engineering, and this is basically what I did all my life. So I was always on the programming side of water, skill with MATLAB, then it became Python, and it was always sort of at that intersection. Actually, when I got my Master of Science, then I started working as an IT consultant. But then I found out that I really didn't like programming per se, but I actually like to develop, computational solutions for water problems. So, once I realized that, I was like, okay, fine. And then I did a PhD. I went to Hong Kong for this, actually, data science for water, when data science was not even a word. And then I got lucky because basically everything, the world seemed to move in my direction. So to be frankly speaking, all the possible regrets that I had, that you mentioned, Jessica, turned out to be like strong points, or maybe accidentally, but it was like, I thought, I really regretted not going into IT, but then it's like, IT came to me, I was pretty lucky. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I love that. And that's very similar to what June was speaking about as well. It's like, how can you kind of turn these challenges, into innovation or into opportunity? So that's great. Thank you. So yeah, if anyone else has any other questions to jump in, otherwise I can keep going.
I'd just like to jump in with one comment. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Kambiri Cox. I work at the International Water Association, and there I coordinate the Climate Smart Utilities Program. So I was happy to see this as a breakout topic today. And I also facilitate work with the IWA specialist groups. But first, a comment. So Ricardo, you mentioned Python and MATLAB, and that's something that I really think needs to be emphasized with young professionals, especially those who are still currently at university or have the opportunity now to do online courses, because you have such a wealth of information at your disposal, and actually converting that and using big data to actually get about results is a problem I've encountered, like when I first started my career. So I think to place some emphasis on programming skills is not just for the computer geeks. Water managers can use it, advocates can use it as well. I think that's something pretty cool to mention. One question I had actually was regarding the smart energy technology you mentioned. I think it's called FIWARE. Yeah, smart energy management services. I was wondering how you approach utilities with this, and if it's something that's, for example, how do you overcome the unwillingness of some utilities to invest in smart energy systems when the priority is water supply delivery services, right? So how you approach them with this, or if it's something where they actually come to you and say, hey, we want to start doing smart energy, we want to lower our carbon emissions. If you could just give some feedback there.
Sure, thanks for the question, and thanks for presenting. Not far away, because I think IWA should be in the Hague, right? Or
yes, I'm in the Hague, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm looking at the canal right now.
Okay, nice. I can tell you about FIWARE for water, which is like something that I'm more interested in because, we do this, but it's the same. So FIWARE was born, I think, as a European project. So there was like a 400 million sort of grant, like a huge grant from the EU, and a lot of different companies in like engineering, which is an Italian IT company, and I think Telefonica, and I think 4 major companies in Europe kind of like joined together to work on the Internet of the future, which is the Internet of Things, right? So they started developing this, and then a lot of interest was raised because it was actually a very, very interesting solution that they came with. It's very powerful. It's open source, so everybody can contribute to it, and everybody can actually, really contribute and find problems and add solutions. So one of my dearest friends that also is working in this sector is an expert in water distribution system. He is in the committee, chairing the committee of FIWARE for water, which is the water section of FIWARE. And he essentially told me that, you should be interested in this because all the cool guys in water, in Europe at least, are using this. So basically, if you build this huge community, okay, which is very diverse, it's not just people from the industry, it's people also in academia and people bridging between academia and industry. So it's much easier, I would say, to kind of like having this sort of aura that, if there's someone, let's say smart in a water utility that is looking to implement the best solution, we'll be asking one of this person, because I'm talking about dozens, if not hundreds of people already involved in fiber for water. So it would be like quite easy to interact. And then again, I would say system integrators working in the water in general in critical infrastructure are very aware of fiber. So they would be the one, if there has to build like a smart solution, they would be saying, let's use fiber. So you're gonna save money. We really trust this system, and then they will take it from there. So I think it's not that difficult. Still, there's a lot to be done, but it's quite smooth, I would say.
Yeah, let me maybe add just one very quick point, because I see the breakout room is going to an end. Yeah, I think the key point also in these new things, is whenever you have new technology, no standards and so on, then the market is a little bit uncertain, and then like utilities are waiting for somebody to take the first step. And if some big guys or some innovators actually are brave enough to take the first one, then many others will follow very soon. So I think that's also a good point of having, let's say, a group of utilities willing to pursue something like that.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. We have a few more seconds, so thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Kamberi, for the great question, and I look forward to.
So about 6 months into working for Anglian, working for Bar Hale Construction, an opportunity came up where the innovation team at Anglian were looking for someone who had a biology background and a bit of civil engineering knowledge. How often does that come up, and how often would I be in the position and someone know that I was there even to say, oh, we have someone who might fit that bill. And so with a stroke of luck, I got into Anglian Water. I just took the opportunity to go in and do something a bit different. And I remember going in and thinking, God, these people are going to ask me to come up with new ideas. How am I going to do that? Who am I to say that this big water company that's been going for years, these industry experts, how am I going to tell them how to do their jobs better? It's quite a scary thing. But actually, what you learn is it's not about that. It's about being able to work with people and understand their problems and listen to them and listen to other people who do have those ideas and connect the dots. And that's how I've built my career from there. So moving through that first position as a technologist through to working as a project manager and then in operations, and then finally moving into the role that I have today, is really working with people to understand their problems and then finding the right solution. And that's kind of how I've managed to get to where I am. So we want to talk about the water tech people nexus. So first thing I do, or some people might have done when you hear about something, is you give it a Google, don't you? So that's what I did. I went and had a Google. So what is the Water-People-Technology Nexus? Let's see what Google tells me. And as I said, I am easily distracted, so I go off on tangents. And actually the first thing that came up on Google, or maybe the third or fourth, was what were the, I've written down 7, I think it was 6 new technologies that can create a clean water society. There was one on there called the Drinkable Book. Awesome. It's a book that's made out of filter paper and gives basic wash advice on it. So water and sanitation. And actually what that filter paper can be used for is to clean the water for one person for up to 4 years. Awesome. Right, that's amazing. It's been given out in some countries in need. Then another one, the Life Straw. I don't know if anyone's come across that before. I have. I went traveling before, so I missed that out earlier. I went traveling whilst I was trying to figure out what I was doing after university. I went to Australia, and then I went across Southeast Asia, typical backpacker from the UK. And the only reason I remember looking at that is because I was thinking, oh, well, maybe do I need a Life Straw? Where am I going? That was my ignorance at the time. But awesome piece of technology. This thing can filter water to the same standard as drinking water, pretty much, and will do at least 1,000 litres in one filter. So really can make a difference. And then the other technology that came to mind that really stuck with me in terms of innovation was desalination. So desalination, I think, is a really interesting topic when you come to innovation, and when you talk about the Water-People-Technology Nexus, because, you know, innovation for me is a lot to do with timing. Timing can kind of cover everything you want to know about when it comes to a system, when it comes to system thinking, because different things influence when it's the right time for an innovation. So Emma may know, I certainly know that in Anglian Water's plans, you know, we have desalination in our optioneering, but probably not for another, definitely not 5 years, maybe another 10, 15, you know, that's a long way off. I guarantee when it comes around to it, that will be innovation. You know, that will be innovation in the UK. Thames Water have it in the UK. They built it, I think, around the time of the Olympics, but, you know, it is innovation. It's different to us. I read on there that in Israel, in 1960, they installed their first desalination plant. So on that basis, we're behind the curve, aren't we? We're not innovative, we're slow. We're really slow. But actually, you know, that's because what system are they working within in the water industry in Israel? What system are we working within in the UK? You know, there's a vast difference in terms of where we are, and there's a lot of factors that play into it. But timing or the things that come about within your system influence when that's innovational and when that comes to life. And I guess the reason why I talk about that is every time people talk to me about innovation or ask me about, you know, what I've learned, is I always come back to it. Like, timing is everything when it comes to innovation, but you can do things to influence the timing, right? So you can affect your system, you can affect your nexus. If you think about within my role, within a business, a very small scale, you can change that with change management. You can do it through stakeholder management. You can tell people a story that makes it convincing about why they need to adopt a new way of working, a new technology. You can do it with departments, and so you can talk to them, as we do, Emma, at Anglian Water. We can talk to our supply colleagues about how what they want to do will influence our networks colleagues, so downstream. So actually, should we make a decision on how much we're pumping from one station versus another purely based on energy? Or actually, should we consider the fact that if we turn on a pump on and off frequently throughout the day and we don't have the right control in place, actually we're going to cause a load of transient pressure waves in the network, and therefore we're going to cause a load of bursts. And actually the amount of stuff that we spend on fixing those bursts is far greater than the amount of energy that we save by turning that pump off for a short period of time. You know, so what can you do to influence that? And then even higher, you've got what we can do to influence the system at an industry level. So everything, and it kind of blew my mind when I realized this. You know, I've been in the industry for a couple of years, and you see how much public opinion plays through to what we do as water professionals. You know, how much does politics affect what I do in my job? And actually, what can we do to ensure that people understand the needs of the water industry and the water cycle? So actually, water companies all the time, universities all the time, other businesses all the time are talking to government about what's important. And that again is influencing your timing. That is influencing when the East of England is going to see its first desalination plant. You know, is that going to happen ever? When would it happen? What needs to be done first before we can look at those sort of sources? But all of these factors play into what systems thinking mean, and actually what the water technology people nexus means.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good lead-in, maybe, to just opening it up for some conversation around this, because we, unfortunately, with the tech glitches, just have to shorten this session a little bit. And we do want to spend a good portion of time hearing from you, hearing about the challenges that you all face in your day-to-day work, with this interplay between water, people, and technology. So Finn said it very well, that timing is everything in innovation. And a lot of that comes down to how we manage people, how we have these conversations, how we are influenced or can influence public opinion. So from my side, I mean, I can give one story about this and then open the floor for hearing from your challenges. But I was working at a water technology startup last year, and the technology startup was exactly that. It was purely technology based. It was run by people who had a lot of intelligence around one specific niche topic, and really struggled with the understanding of this systems thinking. So you can have a piece of technology come in and plug into something, but without laying the foundation that's needed to be able to adapt to that, to having these front-end operators log on to a system and use that now instead of what they've been doing for 50 years or 30 years or however long they've been in the sector. That's a complete behavior change, and that blocks technology adoption even before or after the innovation pipeline. Once you're moving down into getting something in place, you need people on board, you need all of the communications around that, and you need to be able to show that transition that needs to happen and why. So as you just said very nicely, Finn, that conversation that happens between departments is so crucial. So yeah, just something I wanted to put out there, and maybe that triggers any of you to thinking about some of the challenges you're facing. I'm very sorry I missed the introductions, but if you just want to turn your mics on and anybody has any challenges that they're facing, and additionally to that, how you can view this kind of network of people and experts to support overcoming some of those challenges. So that's sort of where I'd like to take the rest of the conversation. I see Godfred's mic is on. Do you want to go first?
So I think this is exactly one of the issues my PhD is looking at. So I'm trying to look at in terms of the politics around digital innovations, digital water innovations. So in the global South context. So one thing that keeps reoccurring within the literature and even within policy space is that most of these innovations are kind of implemented within on-grid networks. So what happens to those who are off-grid? What happens to those who don't have access to some of these innovations? And there's another issue about, does ICTs or digital innovations kind of enhance participatory governance in the water sector? So we've been discussing this for the past year, and I think it's really a challenge. And so I did a study, my master's study in Ghana. I looked at water payments using electronic channels, so maybe mobile payment and others. And one of the findings was that mostly low-income communities or people who don't really have enough money, if I may say, the poor or the marginalized, tends to be more to suffer more inequality. So we can't really say that digital innovation is a silver bullet. So it kind of creates a bit of inequalities within that space. So it's still an ongoing discussion, and we're trying to find ways to help kind of contribute in discussions around these areas.
You think that actually some of those marginalized communities could be left behind, even and that gap become bigger because of these changes? Yeah,
especially, the water sector has its own inequality. So there are arguments that this innovation rather amplifies it, so it kind of even widens that inequality gap. Yeah.
Cool. Emma or Hector, any challenges you want to share?
Yeah, I think I see, well, I can relate a bit in terms of, for example, when I was doing my PhD, you have this very nice technology that can do, I don't know, magic, but yeah, at the end, if the utilities are not ready for it, then no one is not going to use it. But yeah, I was also thinking that, for example, it depends on to which markets do you want to target each technology, because, for example, the technologies that we develop, or some of my colleagues are developing in wetsuits, they are for high-end users or developed countries, as Godfrey said. Perhaps then in other countries these are not really useful. But yeah, I think it will be interesting to then target technology to markets that can access to it, and not only for developed countries. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. think that's a really valid point. I think understanding the market that you're entering, the system that you're entering, how your product or offering fits. We talk a lot about not just technology readiness levels, but most people will be familiar with those, but commercial readiness levels. So actually understanding what you bring to your client, what are you going to, what's your USP, and that's actually where we think what we know we've been able to do with the shop window is that platform isn't just for us as a business, it's for our supply chain. So we've had a number of successes where we've really tied the dots together and helped those companies really find their place in the market, and actually remove that need for a secondary trial with another water company. They're almost skipping ahead to that first implementation the next time around, and that's what we're trying to do with the way in which we run innovation at Anglian, very much in an open fashion.
I want to be mindful, we have about 2 more minutes. Sorry we had to cut this short, but Emma, I'll let you take it away.
This Emma or this Emma?
Whichever Emma would like to go.
Emma Grace, did you want to share anything?
Just that quite a lot of what's been said already is kind of focused on how we bring everyone together with innovation. So both kind of other water kind of industry partners, the people that we work with closely, people around the world who work for water companies, but also internally, there are always kind of groups of people within any company that are either kind of change adverse or kind of technologically inept and aren't quite so keen to go on with any changes in innovation, but also areas of the business that from an information services point of view end up becoming a black hole, and kind of get left behind in the innovation. So it's how we make sure that we're not singling out specific places, but we bring everything together in the kind of innovation process.
I really like that, kind of shining light into that black hole of innovation. So just being mindful of like 30 seconds left, can each of you give me one word of how you could visualize RiSWP helping support this progression in your career?
Not really one word, but SWAN model.
The SWAN model? Okay, that's good to know. Hector?
That's a good question. I don't know. Stakeholders?
Okay. Godfred?
Co-production.
Co-production? Co-production.
Yeah.
I like that. And Haitam?
I think industry, academia collaboration or something.
Collaboration, awesome. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll get into this a bit as we close down the session. But as part of SWAN, we do want to make sure that we can cover these different types of challenges and really prepare the workforce as much as possible for what we want to do in the sector, which overall we all kind of have that same vision of safe and affordable water and sanitation for all. But how we get there is very different in different countries. And we also want to be mindful of that and make sure that we're responding to a global network of people who are facing different challenges from emerging economies or developed countries that might have, full scope and insights of every single pump station along their network to off-grid locations as well. So let me just check on time. I think we might have to do this manually to go back into the main session.
I think Shayna will bump us back in if you and Finn had any other closing thoughts that you might want to share.
I just want to be mindful of having time to report back and hear from the other groups and wrap up. Finn, any closing words?
Well, I said at the start of the talk, if I had time, I'd try and sell you on why you should stay in the water industry. So I'm going to take advantage of this time. The close to my talk was, why does this all matter? And June kind of talked about it a little bit as well, but it's certainly why I'm really passionate about working in the water industry. And Godfrey, you talked on it a little bit, that opportunity for gaps and inequalities to get bigger, flip that on its head, and our ability as water professionals connecting with societies across the globe, we have an opportunity to really support our communities and the environment which we serve. And being part of that journey is incredibly exciting. Throw into that one of the top global risks at the moment and for the foreseeable future is a water crisis. We are part of one of the most terrifying or exciting industries likely for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. You know, being part of that journey of helping people is something that I think will be great to be part of. And so I'd urge you all to stay with us and to continue to grow your careers in the water industry, because we need you, and together we'll be able to achieve great things.
Beautifully said. I think also just to add to that, that tap into any and every network you can within the sector. We at SWAN and RiSWP, we don't want to be a silo. We want to be integrated and interconnected with as many other groups as possible. So reach out to us with ideas for partnerships and collaborations. We're always open to that. And we do want to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. So on that note, we can do a communal countdown back into the group. Did we have anybody who wanted to be the reporting back person in charge? Maybe Sapir, I'll look to you since you're here from the beginning.
I'd be happy to.
Control systems, where we basically servicing all the other departments that you see in blue, bulk water, reticulation, wastewater, and so on. You can see we quite, you know, a large group. In terms of the number of plants that we service, we've got 27 wastewater treatment plants, 9 water treatment plants, 530 reticulation pump stations. Some people call them distribution pump stations. And then 85 on the bulk water side. And then we've got various loggers within the distribution network. Yeah, this is one of our wastewater treatment plant, as Athlone treatment plant, along the major freeway N2. Yeah, what I'm showing is the generic SCADA systems, and we're trying to move away from these generic SCADA systems into an OPC UA environment, which I will share later on. Yeah, you just, for example, yeah, it's an RTU sending information to a SCADA, and the SCADA is logging and trending that information. Regarding the implementation and the uptake of smart technologies, I've chosen 2 areas, which is the OPC UA, and the other one that I'm going to share later is a low power wide area network, which is a LoRa. We're trying to move away from our current legacy systems to an environment where there's interoperability and information exchange between systems. And we have identified OPC UA as a standard that could assist us in going forward. Basically, it is due to the fact that at a corporate level, City of Cape Town as a whole has got a data strategy document, and that outlays the importance of data in terms of evidence-based decision making. So yeah, I'm saying that data is an asset, and it's an asset that needs to be shared. And data itself, we need to extract value from the data, and we need to ensure that data is secured. And looking at our current systems, they are standalone using proprietary protocols. And looking at where we are globally, Industry 4.0 is already happening, and we want to move into that space. And I say that Industry 4.0 is also characterized by semantic interoperability of systems, and we're trying to have systems that can be integrated and also interoperable with data security. right? The OPC UA at a glance, it's a standard that is pushed by the OPC Foundation. Some of you in the group might know, but it enables you to merge the operational technologies and IT, and it's a secure standard that offers you reliability, platform independence. You don't have to be bound by Windows. You could go on the Linux platform. OPC UA is able to work in that space too. And with OPC UA, we are targeting an environment where data can be shared across the organization without, spending so much time trying to get different systems to talk to each other. You can have data in the automation environment shared with an ERP environment, for an example, in terms of asset management. And also OPC UA enables you to move data vertically and horizontally. Here I show on this slide where you could have sensors moving data through the OPC UA all the way up to your ERP, or you could have your sensors showing their data with your SCADAs. Currently, we've got standalone systems that have various proprietary protocols, and it's difficult for us to, to have systems talking to each other, and we're trying to move away from that. On this slide, what I'm trying to show here, or what I'm trying to bring across, is a pilot project that we are doing in the distribution network, where we've got loggers that are monitored using GPRS, and the data is hosted by a third party that sits in the UK. Through the technologies available within Industry 4.0, we did an analysis where we compared various low power technologies, and we chose LoRa as a technology that we could pilot and be able to get data back into our application servers. Our goal of this pilot project is to employ a logger that is LoRa enabled, send data to a back-end server that City of Cape Town can host, and be able to use the data instead of relying on a web-based data coming from a third party. Basically, the goal of the project is to use loggers that employ a communication unit that connects to a city-operated wireless network rather than a commercial cellular network, and route the data back to our own servers. And the second goal is to store the data where we can be able to analyze. The reason of us using a pilot project, because it will enable us to explore the technology more holistically before we can go big. Here, what I'm showing here is a typical instrument. It's a typical instrument with a water logger that is LoRa enabled through the gateway. And what we're doing here, we are also mixing the new technologies with our existing networks, this metropolitan area network. It's an existing network that we have, so that we can leverage on, so that we can be in line with our corporate data strategy that seeks to have data available and shared across the organization. Yeah, from a user perspective, this is how the data will flow. You will have your instrument with a LoRa-enabled logger to your gateway using our existing metro area network, which is in this case could be fiber, back to a database and an application dashboard for viewing. To sum up our journey towards implementing of smart technologies, we recognize the value of data and we recognize emerging technologies. And we have updated our architectures to include the OPC UA. And our view is that beyond the hype of the fourth industrial revolution, these technologies must be integrated to provide value, something tangible. And we are adapting to change, and we will collaborate where possible. In terms of the skills gap, I've just listed some of the skills outlined by our corporate data strategy. They had a research around the organization and came up with various skills based on their findings that the organization is short of. Basically, we're just short of data scientists and analytics. And from the automation side, if you see what we're doing, even with the LoRa, the goal is to get the data back to our back-end servers available. And the second phase of the analysis, it's not really the focus for us for now. The focus for now is to getting the data, using the technology back, and we house it. And coming from the automation environment, we don't have really people who've got analytic skills in my environment. But our goal for now is to getting the data back and be able to understand the technology and use it and be able to even add other services like currently on the market, you get, for example, in the pumps, vibration monitoring sensors that are LoRa enabled. So if we are able to understand the technology, then we can expand and add other services within the organization. That's basically from me. The highlight of our uptake is the OPC UA and the LoRa. Those are the major projects that we are targeting and busy piloting and implementing at the moment.
Thank you very much, Kawani. That was very insightful, and I think raising the issue of the non-technical barriers, and especially in terms of skills that are necessary, is very important for our young professionals. So that skill gap is something that we can aim to fill as young professionals. So now I'd like to hand over to our next speaker, Mr. Oliver Greveson, who has many years of experience in both consulting and the utility environment in the smart water space across Britain and Europe. And he's currently working for ZTech, as you know. And Oliver, what do you think of the challenges and opportunities that Kawani has raised, and what others would you add?
There's lots, and I think probably the best way is, how do we start on it? I mean, I remember years ago standing up at conference and started talking about smart wastewater networks, and there was a professor stood up and said, but we've had this promise for the past 15 years. When's it actually going to happen? And he was right. That was Professor David Butler from the University of Exeter. And he was right. And actually smart wastewater networks had been happening to some extent. But I think when I look at smart wastewater now, there's kind of two areas. You've got the great project that we've just seen, which is very much following the SWAN layers. And for those of you who haven't read The Swan Layers, it came out 9-10 years ago now. Go on the website and read it. It's a great infrastructure of what I call a horizontal infrastructure, from the physical layer all the way up to the analytics. This very much fits into layer 3, the telemetry and automation, and getting that data so it's available to everybody. Which, here we go, here's the Swan Layers. If you haven't seen them, I think most have seen them. So what we've just seen is how to get the data to people. And in a lot of the big organizations, you have lots of siloism. So lots of data in different places. You have different versions of the truth. What you've got to, the power of what we've just seen is bringing all those versions of the truth together in one platform and sharing that across the business. But from a more strategic point of view, you've got, all right, this smart water thing, what do we actually want to do? And realistically, there was, some of you may not have noticed it in there, but there was a very bold, very important statement that said, we've got to realize the value of data. We realized that through the conversion to information, to the conversion to insight. You'll have seen quite a lot of people talk about situational awareness. The industry that we work in is big. In the UK, where you've got big water companies, you've got very few but big water companies. They've got sort of 50, 100,000 kilometers of pipe. They've got, the company I used to work for had 1,120 wastewater treatment works, over 100 water treatment works, 5,000 or 6,000 pumping stations. How do you get the data from there? How do you actually realize what's going on? And that's the challenge. And really the first step, everyone talks about technology, but the first step is actually stakeholder engagement. Finding what information you want, converting that down into, okay, what data do I need to inform that information? And then what instrumentation, what sensing, what data needs do I have on the ground to go up the pyramid and convert all of that into analytics, into our layer 4, layer 5. So a lot of the solutions we've got at the minute are concentrated on application. So non-revenue water probably being the best application, the most well-developed application in the smart water industry. And there's lots of technologies out there that water companies can adopt. There's lots of methodologies out there. But the risk is you buy a solution from a supplier, great. Some of the solutions out there are fantastic, but that creates a silo, and that's a problem. So there's just been a notice of 10 minutes remaining, not a lot of time. Let's open this up into questions from people from the group. If anyone's got any questions.
I've got a question.
Hi. Sorry, you can go.
Okay. How far behind is the water industry compared to like other industries, say like finance or energy or anything like that, with their adoption of like smart technologies?
It very much depends upon the industry, but in finance, I remember a few years ago visiting an office block in London of one of the major smart water companies, and they were doing text mining. They could find out the score of a game without watching something by watching people's reactions on text and instant messaging. Now, you can argue, well, is there a use for that in the water industry? Well, absolutely, for leakage detection. So that hasn't even entered the industry's minds. To a certain extent, there's a solution in the UK, I think around Europe, which is using customer influencing, using the data and using psychological techniques to influence people's water consumption. So there are things being developed, but depending upon the industry, depending on the value of the product. The problem the water industry has is water isn't a very valuable product. it's absolutely essential product, but the financial value is almost nothing. Bring that into wastewater and the financial value is less than nothing. So you've got quite a difficult thing for the industry to implement when your product isn't worth anything or worth very little. And that all comes into the value of water argument.
I was watching another presentation a couple weeks ago, and one of the presenters said the water was 5 years behind energy in specifics. So that was just the root of my question, I guess. I'm just curious for your perspective.
5 years, it's difficult to put a number on, but I wouldn't say it's too far behind, to be honest.
Thank you very much.
Hi. I would, in terms of implementation, what would be the challenges of actually implementing a real-time system? Specifically, if anyone in the group knows of the term of a digital twin, what would be the challenges of smart water of actually implementing it in the infrastructure?
Data quality. First and foremost, digital twin, probably the best example of a digital twin I've seen. And realistically, I mean, it depends what digital twin you mean, but the operational digital twin or say a construction digital twin, different things and different data needs. But generally, it's data quality. Now, the best example I've seen is in the city of Valencia, with Idrica and Global Omnium. And I visited there in March, just before most countries locked down. And they've done some brilliant work. But the thing that I was most impressed with, the thing that I've been bleating on about for years, is data quality. So they've installed all their instruments, so the instruments are right. And they have got a very detailed knowledge of what the uncertainty of the data is. So the uncertainty of basically the uncertainty of their decisions based upon that data is known. And of course, come back on to they've got dual redundancy on every single point. So every single outstation or data logger has dual redundancy.
Yeah, I've actually I've done research on that. But yeah, thank you very much for the comments.
Can I ask a question? Which is from your experience, Oliver, and also the others. What has been your experience with the integration between systems? Because often you do have several systems that are collecting different types of data, which at the end is for the same purpose. But the utility doesn't want to implement a new system and waste all the investment done in previous ones. So at the end of the day, every manager has a dashboard full of different data coming from different places, and all that would be much better together and integrated in one single system. What is your experience on that?
The danger is creating silos, and they have, and we saw the case study presented in this session, and that's all about breaking down those silos and making the data available. And that's the sort of system you've got to put in place, because otherwise, yeah, you're right. I've seen a lot of excuses about not bringing digital systems, digital transformation into place, because of, oh yeah, we've got old kit that won't integrate here, won't integrate there. There's some great work being done on metadata via, Rue, I know you know, via the IWA. So that's all about that integration. And I think I've got something down on my schedule at the minute to do an interoperability workshop as well. So there is that. Interoperability is of course a problem. Metadata, the use of metadata, is hoping to break that down slightly, but equally the system that we've seen in the case study today is precisely all about that. It's bringing that data together in one place, one version of the truth.
Thanks. Can I ask Gobani, do you want to add anything to that? How have you experienced bringing the data together and the silos you've experienced in your company?
It is something that is there and that we're breaking away from. One thing that I will add is that I mentioned that we've got 27 treatment plants. So what we're doing is we're trying to bring data from those different plants into a centralized SQL environment as a start in trying to have a single version of truth and where data is available from a unified platform. And also in terms of the other question, OPC-UA answers the issue of information modeling. The standard itself is very rich in information modeling. And when you move to the digital twin environment, it is the right standard to use. That's the OPC-UA standard.
Thanks, Gobani. Sorry, I see we're going to be ending now in a few seconds. Thank you all very much for joining, and sorry it was a shortened session. If you have any more questions, please pop them in LinkedIn and we'll get them answered.
We have as water sector, and that's very nice to do. And Jelle can introduce himself.
I think he's still muting.
Muted? Okay.
Yeah, I found the button to unmute. Yeah, Jan Dikker, working as a data scientist at Royal Haskoning DHV. Yeah, I've worked across various domains, also in water. And what I do, besides my work as a data scientist, is that I sometimes teach data science skills. And yeah, Lisette and me, we prepared actually some examples of teaching data science skills and of our digital transformation projects that we're running, because we thought this could maybe be yeah, nice to see, and to could be a nice starting point for a discussion on digital skills development. Yeah, so we all just introduced ourselves. Lisette, I think it would be good if I give the floor to you now.
Yeah, so very shortly about what we are aiming to do as Royal Haskoning DHV. Our mission is to identify, develop and implement impactful data-driven solutions within the water sector. So that's for mostly public sector, but also industries, a lot of industries. And as a team, we are we have a multidisciplinary set of skills. So we have the digital consultants with more the soft skills and doing some roadmap development on where do you want to stand in digital transformation as water organization. We have very technical people like Jelle, who's a data scientist, but also data engineers. We have GIS experts, and we have software developers. And many people know us from the years of domain knowledge that we have already within Royal Haskoning DHV. So like hydrologist, ecologist, yeah, on every subject matter we have an expert. Yeah, we have a great team of all kinds of experts, which we think is also needed to be successful in a digital way of working. Yeah, next one. And what we would like to do with you within this breakout session is have a valuable discussion with you about two topics, namely how to become a smart water professional, which the lecture of June was also going about, like how on an individual level can I become successful and what do I need to believe also in myself. But also how can we share the digital skills that we have, because I think we all work in organizations where not everyone is already a smart water professional. So what can we do to also enhance the digital skills of our colleagues? So that are the two topics of this breakout session. And to start with, I think it's good to give this overview of the challenges that we see that are in the sector, yeah, leading to the need for smart water professionals. And maybe you recognize these. I think we all have to do with an aging workforce and also a knowledge outflow with people going for retirement. There are some difficulties with attracting digital talents. So that's what I know about the Dutch sector, that not everyone wants to work for a public water organization because there are older people and sometimes they are not as innovative as we want them to be. So being an attractive workplace is a challenge. And the last one, but not least, is there are huge challenges to implement a data-driven way of working. So we actually need this smart water professional in our future challenges, but also current challenges. That on as a short introduction to this first question, and we actually also prepared something like Mentimeter, but then the competitor in AHA slides. And the question we have for you is, what skills do you think as a smart water professional are needed to be successful, to be an impactful smart water professional? You can go to the link below on your telephone or also on your computer. We will share these results as a startup for discussion.
Can you share the link in the chat?
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Doesn't allow me to copy that.
Are you sharing it, Jelle?
Yeah, having some issues trying to find the chat screen.
If you hover to the top of your screen, you should find the chat.
Yeah, maybe someone else can just paste it in the.
I have it.
Oh, there.
Yeah. So please all go ahead to AHA slides and I'll share the results. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, so we see data analysis, focus, calmness, thoughtful, driven, GIS, innovative. I was very curious about if people will come up with more like the technical skills or the soft skills.
Mm-hmm. It also seems.
I think it's very imbalanced, and there might be some more soft skills coming up at you, like people-oriented, creativity, calmness, and I also very believe in this set of skills, like to become smart in digital. Technique is just one, but to have success with technique, I think these soft skills are way more important. I work at a technical company or within a technical advisory group, but my background is in communication studies, so that's actually quite funny. Cool. Okay, this gives I think a good overview of what we believe are the skills that are needed. I'm sorry for this motor passing by. We would like to give you 2 examples of how we are working at this upskilling / upscaling of skills. And afterwards we have 3 questions for you, which we will put in the group discussion. The first one is the Data Science and Engineering Expert Program of the Dutch Water Authorities. This is a project that we are working on, which we are doing for 8 Dutch water authorities. They are working together to get more digital talents working for their organizations. And because they didn't have the power and also the attractiveness to attract these talents themselves, they asked us to set up something like a traineeship where data science and data engineers are going to be trained during 1 year, and after that year they will be part of the different organizations. So they will be spread out over 8 different water authorities. And I think this is a nice example of how also organizations can work together to get the talents and to upskill these talents more effectively if they work together than as a company alone. The thing that we did is do the recruitment and prepare the educational program that they follow. So it's a 4-week course, but also support them on working on use cases within 2 rounds of 5 months. And besides the education of the 13 talents, we also facilitate a network around, because if we just educate 13 talents and place them in an organization, they might not be successful, because they also need people around them that support them by, for example, implementing the applications that they develop, but also people that want to be the product owner, and what does it mean to be the product owner. So around the 13 talents that we educate, we also are building a network around so they can be successful within their organization. So this is the first example which I would like to share with you from the Netherlands. And Jelle has the second example. Oh, these were all the organizations that are working on these initiatives. So just to show you.
I just want to point out that we're going to be pulled back to the main group at 6:25. So yeah, just be mindful of time so we can get to the discussion and have a good discussion in a few minutes.
Yeah, we will.
Thanks. Yeah. The second example that we had, so Lisette just shared with you a program that is addressing the need of different organizations to attract, let's say, digital natives, or a group that was not present within these organizations before. The second project that I would like to share with you is a program that we developed for our own professionals. So these are typically younger people, talented people with a technical background. So you can think, for instance, of hydrologists or ecologists that have a very strong interest in data and data analytics, but still lack a little bit of practice with more modern techniques, I would say. So we have an internal digital academy, and this digital academy, it actually consists of a number of mostly hard skills, I should say, so mostly programming skills, but one track in particular I wanted to share with you. So what we did there is we actually invited those technical experts to join us for 2 months. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring modern data analysis to their projects. Because usually they are, of course, working with data. However, they're not always using let's say, the most modern techniques, or maybe the things that they learned before it's not always applicable to the projects that they're doing. So what we did is we guide them in this program by picking the right type of e-learning, by actually answering all their questions that they might have, and also by having them doing project work. So that is applying the new techniques that they learned in projects from their work, such that they later on yeah, and then later on they can actually apply the newly learned skills in their projects. Yeah, and also we try to, of course, advocate the use of these new techniques within their organizations by involving their managers, by involving their direct colleagues, by involving the clients they're working for. Yeah, I think that was the second example. What we found, yeah.
To leave some time for discussion, we shall we leave the success for what it is, and leave it open to people themselves, and just ask the questions in this group, not going back to AHA slides to.
Yeah, I think we're a small enough group to just have an open discussion.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think everyone also after the keynote of June likes also to share some ideas of how do we think we can be successful as smart water professionals? What do we need from ourselves, but also from the organizations where we work for? So we also wanted to have this open discussion with you. And let's just start with this first question, and maybe we also end with this first question. But let's see. Is there anyone who feels free to share some experience of what do you need from your organization? What do you already have? What helps you to become a smart water professional and have this impact?
Yeah, so feel free to just unmute or type your answer in the chat. Or is it, oh, Ethan, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can share really quick. So at my organization, one of the things that's really helped me is an internal innovation program that just started up within the last year or two. And it's given folks like me who are, at the start of their career, an opportunity to present ideas and get feedback and request resources to try to implement those ideas. So I've been trying to look into ways that we can be, we can make our water department more data driven. So that's been something that's really helped me, is just to know that I have support from leadership, that my ideas are being listened to, and that we're given resources to actually try something out.
Does anybody have a follow-up question to that, or an additional comment?
Question for Ethan. Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, sorry, if I may. No, I think the focus is maybe an additional comment. The focus here is on maybe the tools that would enable you to be a better smart water professional. But I think what I've noticed is above all what the work process is, so how people go about their work on the day-to-day life, which has to change. So it's not just the tools, but the process around those tools. And that really is being more agile, being more flexible, and really changing the way you think to implement the next better idea, the next better solution that's out there. So yeah, maybe others have different experiences, but that really is my experience, is that it's not really about the tools. I think even people towards the end of their careers nowadays are quite familiar with some of the tools that are out there. It's really about changing the way they think and they approach these tools. But yeah, that's from me. Yeah.
Jelle and Lisette, what have you guys seen in practice with applying the Digital Academy and the other projects? Is this in line with what you've seen, or?
Yeah, so I really also see that support from leadership is very important. So that's something that I have the same experience. I also think that when there's too much support, there's really a top-down push to innovate. That's also a challenge to bring all these innovations together again. So that's something that we really have internally also within RiSWP that we are working on so many innovations for so many clients that it's very difficult to also organize this and to pick the innovations that are really successful and also just throw the less successful innovations away. And that's a difficult thing, and that needs also leadership decisions to be made and being brave to kill your darlings.
Shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah, if we have time left, Lisa. So
yeah, well, we're closing at 6:25, so
what about,
yeah, maybe.
What about we move to the last question then straight away about the role of RiSWP.
We pronounce it RISP. If anyone was confused, the W is silent. Yeah, so I think what we want to know from you, and that's what Emma was saying at the beginning as well, is that we really want the community to be active. We really want to work with everyone who's interested and to shape this community together. We're the leadership team, but for this year, but next year there's going to be new people, and we just want it to be an active and wholesome community. So what we want to know from you, especially on this topic for upskilling and upscaling, as Jelle and Lisette have added in, what can we do to support you in this role, and what would be some resources or tools that we could do as a community? Does anybody have any ideas or thoughts?
Well, I really, if I can kick off, I really appreciated the keynote of June. I didn't know what to expect. It was really on a personal level, like the best pep talk that you can have, like how to believe in yourself. And I think that's really valuable, because we are meeting each other often about specific client cases and in formal structures, like being in your role, but how can we also get closer on a personal level?
I think it was really nice, because I think a lot of us are still, well, obviously young professionals and still trying to make it, and still trying to become the next leader. But I think it also, sometimes we just need to kind of feel with the successes that we have, and also be courageous, but also take time for ourselves and know that we're being as successful as we can be. What are some of the skills that the community would like to learn that they think would be good for upskilling in the smart water sector?
I think there's a piece around making that network of people what you can run ideas past, you can kind of take opportunities to. It may not be that they're necessarily in your geography, but having the opportunity to go and bounce ideas off other individuals from other areas before necessarily taking them to your superiors is certainly something that can try to make sure that you take a more rounded product wherever that may go, and actually understand. I'm sure there are people here, June, you're incredibly good at public speaking, but getting some tips around those kind of skills and how you deliver what is often the same message can be really, really valuable.
Awesome. So public speaking and networking. Anything else from the others?
I would echo that, and communication, and also knowing how to sell yourself, because I often find that really smart people who are sometimes maybe lacking a bit in confidence and maybe a little bit awkward, like we all are, don't quite know how to present themselves as who they truly are. So that's communication blended with a little bit of awareness, and how to market yourself to the path that you want, and how to relate your abilities and your skill to what is needed. How do you tell that story?
Awesome.
I agree with what both Tom and June have said. Just having a forum where we can bounce ideas and ask, hey, has anybody else experienced this or come up against this challenge? And then in turn, like, that gives us practice in communicating with those we're not typically working face to face with, but this is a community where we can help each other and practice communication, and we can have collaboration to learn from one another.
Great. And what kind of format would you want that to be in? Because these days we have LinkedIn, we have workshops, we have webinars. Like, what kind of format would you think would be good to have this kind of network or ideation space? Would LinkedIn be a good space for sharing that? Or do you want more formal workshops and webinars where ideas are shared and interactive as well?
I see a lot of value in being able to talk, and even over Zoom. I see a lot of value for that space to bounce ideas. Maybe Zoom webinars centered around a certain challenge or a certain approach that people can rally around. It's just an idea.
Yeah, like having spur of the moment meetups, and people can just join with a beer or coffee or whatever and bounce ideas back off. Anybody else? I think they're letting us have a few more minutes, so we can just talk until we bounce back to the other room.
I think what might also be nice is within a community you can learn stuff or learn stuff from others. And yeah, at our company we also have bootcamps in which we share our knowledge. As a RiSWP community, we can maybe do some matching, mix and what can you bring to this community, or what can people learn from you, and what do you want to learn from others. And if you can match these questions with then we can also just on a very personal level in 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 train each other.
Yeah,
that will be great.
Yeah, nice. That's a really good idea. Yeah, I'm really excited about what we can offer the community, and all of these ideas are fantastic. Yeah, any other thoughts or questions or something completely different in the last few minutes that we haven't covered or that you thought we would cover in this session? Or
do mock interviews. That's always helpful, especially now
Oh,
things digital
yes.
and you're doing it virtual. Knowing how to
Yes.
do a video conference interviews as well as in person.
That's such a good point. Emma and I are quite good friends, and she told me a few days ago that she actually would practice interviews all the time because it's quite nerve-wracking. So to do that with somebody else and to give you tips and pointers is really good. So anything else from any others who haven't shared yet or want to contribute?
Yeah, I can just reiterate what was said earlier. As somebody very early on in their career, only just having graduated, it's really nice to get exposure to people that are further along in their career and be a part of those conversations outside the traditional hierarchy of an organization. So just to get practice speaking with more senior individuals and get exposure to ideas that are coming out on their end is really valuable, as well as the one-on-one mentorship is always very helpful. So really
Nice.
appreciate the activities.
It's funny, I was really expecting this session to be focused on technical skills, but we're only talking about kind of the more soft skills, which is actually really nice. Or at least for me, I'm biased because I'm more in the social side of things, but yeah.
We can also become a smart water professional, Lisa.
Yes, we can.
Technical knowledge.
I think I am, but I don't really know that I am.
There is a future for us.
Yes. All right. Well, we have 30 seconds left, but I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining this session. I'm sorry we had so many glitches and Lisette and Yella were in the wrong room, but I think we made the best of it. And this is just the beginning of our community. So reach out to us. We're going to do the things that you're asking us. And I love the ideas of boot camps and one-on-ones and mock interviews. So I will definitely feed those back to the LT and see how we can make those happen. So see you all back in the main group, and we'll be in touch soon. Bye.